Hey, welcome to After She Left. Stay till the end and don't forget to subscribe. There were two dinner plates on the counter, still warm, still steaming. One with grilled salmon and rice, the way I always make it when she says she's too tired to chew steak. The other untouched. That one was mine. I had lit the candles, poured the wine, set the old jazz playlist she likes, the one with the sax solos that sound like rainy glass. I even turned off my damn phone. At 7, I texted, "Tables set, just you and me tonight." At 7:42, the message was still unread. At 8:13, I opened Instagram. Her boss had posted a story, panoramic view, rooftop bar, laughter in the background, and her center frame laughing into someone's ear, wearing the dress she bought last week, the one she said was for weddings and boring client dinners. The moment I saw it, my hands started shaking, not because she went, but because that meant she lied about not feeling well. By 9, I'd packed up her plate and put it in the fridge. By 11, I stopped pacing. By midnight, I locked the door and went to bed. Alone. She didn't come home that night. She didn't text the next day either. And tonight, it's been 2 full days of silence. But here's the part that keeps replaying in my head. She could have stayed. I asked her. I looked her in the eye. She adjusted her earring and said, "Don't go. Just tonight. Just be here." She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "It's just a party, Emmett. Don't be dramatic." Now the salmon's spoiled. The wine's gone flat. And the silence? It's louder than any argument we ever had. The next morning, I found a red cloth napkin in her coat pocket. We don't own red napkins. We never have. It was folded neatly, like someone had slipped it in her hand and told her, "Keep this." I turned it over 3 times, trying to find a logo, a lipstick stain, anything that might explain why it smelled faintly of gin and cologne. Not hers, not mine. Something older, richer, darker. She was still asleep when I found it. Face down, fully dressed, jacket tossed over the edge of the bed like she'd collapsed into it. No shoes, no explanation. I left for work without waking her. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. That napkin sat in my glove box the whole day while I stared at power lines and filled out maintenance logs, my brain running overtime with thoughts I didn't want to admit out loud. She wasn't texting, wasn't calling. She hadn't even asked if I was mad. By the time I got home, the bedroom door was shut. Lights off, no dinner, no apology, just silence again, so thick it felt like insulation, like we'd both crawled into separate caves and agreed not to disturb each other. I stood outside the door for a while, listening. Then I noticed something that made my stomach turn. The sound of her voice, soft, low, but not talking to me. I pressed my ear to the door, heart pounding. It wasn't a phone call. It was a recording, a voice memo maybe, played quietly, looping over Bluetooth in our speaker. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone. A man's voice. Smooth, confident, slight accent. He was saying her name, over and over, like a private joke. Then it stopped. Silence. I knocked once. No answer. When I opened the door, she was sitting cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone like nothing happened. I asked what she was listening to. She said, "Just a podcast." That was it. No blush, no shift in posture, no shame. Just a lie so effortless, I nearly believed it myself. That night, I slept in the guest room, fully dressed, one eye on the hallway, because I no longer knew who she really was, and I was starting to think, maybe she didn't know either. The next thing that didn't make sense showed up in our mailbox. It was late afternoon, and I'd just gotten home from a brutal shift underground. Some fried transformer near the hospital shorted half the grid. My boots were still caked in red clay when I flipped through the stack of mail, mostly junk. Coupon booklets, a charity envelope, a credit card offer we'd never take. Then I saw it. A white envelope, no return address. Not sealed, just tucked closed. Inside, a single receipt. Not ours. Not from anywhere we go. It was from a high-end Japanese restaurant in the city. Namiro, the one with $38 sushi rolls and cocktails named after constellations. The timestamp said 9:18 p.m. 2 nights ago, the same night she was just grabbing a drink after the rooftop. It was a table for 2. The receipt showed 2 premium sashimi platters, 1 bourbon neat, 1 dirty martini, and a $30 valet. And the signature at the bottom wasn't hers. But it wasn't a stranger's either. It just said M, scrawled fast, like someone who signs things often and doesn't care about who sees it. I stood there by the kitchen island, holding the receipt like it was evidence in a trial no one else knew was happening. The air in the house felt thicker suddenly. My ears started ringing. Not loud, just that distant, hollow kind of ringing that comes when your brain realizes something your heart doesn't want to believe. I walked upstairs. She was in the bathroom, towel on her head, humming. I didn't ask. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I slid the receipt into the back of my toolbox under the sink, behind the sockets and the dead flashlight. I needed time, space, a clear head. That night, I suggested we order takeout. She agreed too quickly. We ate in the living room, watching some talent show neither of us cared about. She laughed a little too loud at the bad singers. I nodded at the TV like I was present, but my eyes kept drifting to her phone on the coffee table. At 8:32 p.m., it buzzed once. She glanced at it, didn't touch it. At 8:34, she stood up, said she needed to go for a quick walk to get her steps in. She hadn't done that in months. I watched her disappear down the street with her earbuds in, hoodie up. 5 minutes later, I unlocked her phone. No passcode. She always said she had nothing to hide. The notifications were clear, except for one open tab still running in her browser, buried under shopping carts and recipe sites. It was a search. Can someone track where you've been with a receipt? No history. No bookmarks. Nothing else. Just that. The tab was left open like a dare, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone wanted me to see it. 3 days after the receipt showed up, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 6 years. His name was Owen Mallory. He used to work with me back when I did long-haul contracts in Nevada, back before I took the city job. We weren't close, but he was the kind of guy you remembered. Tall, talkative, always one eyebrow raised like he knew something you didn't. I hadn't seen his name pop up on my phone since my bachelor party. The second I heard his voice, I knew something was off. "Ellery," he said. "You still with Mela?" I asked him why. He hesitated, then said, "I think I met someone who's pretending not to know me." My stomach dropped. He told me he was consulting for a security firm based out of Sacramento. They'd done some after-hours tech installs for a private event at a rooftop bar. Security cameras, guest list scans, high-profile clientele. Fancy stuff. That was the same night Mela disappeared until 2 in the morning. Owen said there was a woman there, dressed sharp, laughing too loud, always around this one guy in a slate gray suit. She caught Owen's eye because she looked exactly like Mela, just with a different name badge and a story that didn't line up. When he tried to say hi, just to confirm if it was her, she acted like he was crazy, claimed she'd never been to Nevada, never heard of the utility firm we used to work for. She even faked confusion at his name. "I don't know, man," Owen said, his voice getting lower. I let it go that night, but something about the way she looked at me, like she wasn't just covering, like she was scared. I didn't say anything at first. I was sitting in the driver's seat of my truck, keys in hand, engine still running, parked 3 blocks away from our house because I needed to clear my head. But my brain was spinning in all directions. Why would she lie about knowing Owen? What else had she lied about? And why did it feel like this whole thing was spiraling into something bigger than just a one-night slip? Owen said one more thing before hanging up. She told the guy her name was May. Not Mela. May. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, watching a neighbor's sprinkler turn in slow arcs across their lawn, soaking a patch of sidewalk no one ever walks on. It felt like I was standing in the middle of a house I'd built myself, and someone had just shown me the blueprint wasn't mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in the living room with the lights off, watching the front door like something might walk through it that didn't belong. Because now it wasn't just about whether Mela was lying to me. It was about how long she'd been living someone else's life, and whether I was even part of the version she meant to keep. It's strange how something as stupid as a loose light switch can change the way you see your whole house. I'd been meaning to fix the one in the upstairs hallway for months. Every time I flipped it, it sparked a little like it was shorting behind the wall. I knew better, but I ignored it. Like everything else, I didn't want to look too closely at lately. That afternoon, I finally pulled the breaker, grabbed my tools, and opened it up. At first, nothing unusual. Just dust, drywall flakes, old screws. But when I reached back to check the wiring, I felt paper. I thought it was a patch note from the last homeowner, some old scribbled reminder. What I pulled out was a folded photograph and a torn business card taped together. The photo was about 10 years old, slightly faded. 4 people at a picnic table, red checkered cloth, early spring sunlight. One of them was Mela. Her hair was darker, her posture different, stiffer, almost like she didn't know how to pose for the camera. She was sitting beside a man I'd never seen before. But they were close, too close. His hand was resting on the small of her back like it belonged there. The business card was creased and worn, the logo long smudged, but the name was still clear: Marcellus G. Heller, attorney at law. The back had one handwritten line in block letters: M. Heller has copies. Burn originals. I just stood there for maybe a full minute, breathing through my teeth, gripping the photo and card so tight the edge of the paper cut my palm. My wife had hidden this, not in a drawer, not in a box, inside a wall. I didn't even know where to start asking questions. Was this before me? A different life? A legal problem? A marriage? I set the photo on the bathroom counter and waited. She was due home in 20 minutes. I watched the clock tick down like a bomb. She walked in exactly on time, like she always does when she's pretending everything is normal. No pause. No hesitation. Kiss on the cheek, keys in the bowl, jacket on the hook. I asked her if she'd ever heard the name Marcellus Heller. She froze. It was the kind of freeze you can't fake. Her pupils dilated, her fingers curled slightly, and she didn't even try to lie. She just said, "Where did you hear that name? Not who is that? Not why are you asking?" She knew exactly who he was. I showed her the photo. She looked at it like it was a ghost, like something she thought was buried in another life had just clawed its way back into daylight. Then she whispered something that made my whole body lock up. "You weren't supposed to find that." She didn't deny it, didn't explain it. Just walked upstairs quietly like someone turning away from a funeral. She locked the bedroom door, not slammed, not dramatic, just a quiet click. I didn't follow her because I realized this wasn't about an affair anymore. It was about something she erased before I ever met her. And now I was living inside the story she thought she'd buried. 2 days after I found the photo, someone left a note under my windshield wiper. I hadn't told a soul. Not about the photo, the name on the business card, or what Mela said when I confronted her. I kept it quiet, thinking I'd get my head straight first, maybe figure out what I was dealing with. But someone already knew I'd found it, and they were close enough to know what I drove. The note was written on plain-lined paper, torn at the top. 4 words, all caps, sharp pen strokes. "He lied to you too." That was it. No signature, no number. Just those words under the wiper blade of my truck in the parking garage beneath my office building. I checked every camera in that garage. None were working. Coincidence, or maybe intentional, I didn't know which one was worse. I drove home in circles that night, looping aimlessly through side streets, past schools and auto shops, just thinking, wondering, replaying everything. Who was he? Heller? What exactly had Mela buried? And why was it unraveling now, so many years later? By the time I pulled into our driveway, Mela's car was gone. It was 8:17 p.m. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Again. This time I didn't wait around. I grabbed the business card, drove 40 minutes into the city, and parked across the street from the address. A brick building with faded lettering on the glass, Heller and Rowe, Estate and Liability Law. The lights were off, but one window on the 3rd floor glowed yellow behind half-closed blinds. I sat in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers went numb. I hadn't planned what I'd do. I didn't know if I wanted answers or just someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. At 9:02, a tall man in a long gray coat walked out of the building, locking the glass door behind him. I recognized him instantly. Not from real life, from the photograph. Same jawline, same posture. Older now, a little heavier, but definitely the same man whose hand had been resting on Mela's back a decade ago. I opened my door, stepped out slowly. "Mr. Heller," I said. He turned, startled, but not afraid. His eyes flicked to my hand like he was checking if I had a weapon. Then he smiled, too calmly. "You must be Ellery?" he said. I froze. "You know who I am?" He nodded, and the way he said the next sentence made my stomach drop. "I've been wondering when you'd show up." He motioned to the coffee shop on the corner like we were old friends meeting for a late catch-up. I followed him in silence. I didn't want a public scene, and I wasn't ready to cause one. Not yet. We sat across from each other, 2 chipped mugs between us. The waitress didn't even ask for our order, just poured black coffee and vanished. Maybe this was a place he came often. Maybe this was a routine. I represented her once, he began, years ago, but she wasn't Mela back then. She went by Marin. I didn't say a word, just stared at him. She came to me with a problem, said a man was stalking her, threatening to leak things, videos, texts, ugly stuff. She wanted it buried. I made it go away. My throat went dry. So, she was the victim? He shook his head slowly. She said she was. A pause, a long one. But that's not what we found when we looked deeper. I leaned in. What did you find? He looked me right in the eye. Patterns. He stood, dropped a 20 on the table, and gave me one final warning before walking out into the dark. You think this is the first time she's vanished into a new life? Ask yourself what else she changed besides her name. I sat there for a full 10 minutes after he left, coffee going cold, the background hum of the place warping into a blur. I didn't drive home right away, because I wasn't sure what I was going home to anymore. Or who. I didn't sleep that night. I drove until the gaslight came on, circled neighborhoods I didn't recognize, sat in a 24-hour diner parking lot and stared at my reflection in the side mirror until the sun cracked the edge of the horizon. When I finally pulled into our driveway, Mela's car was already there. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. No makeup, hair tied back, wearing one of my old sweatshirts she used to sleep in during our first year together. The house smelled like burned toast and coffee that had been left too long on the burner. She didn't look up right away. Did you find him? She asked, like she already knew the answer. I didn't sit down, just stood there, arms crossed, everything in me vibrating with a dozen questions I couldn't decide how to ask first. Who are you? I finally said. It came out flat, not angry, just tired, like the words had been worn down by the weight of the last few days. She took a long sip of her coffee, staring into the mug like it might help her form the right lie. But when she finally looked at me, her eyes weren't defensive. They weren't even scared. They were resolved. My name was Marin Lath, she said. Back when I lived in Atlanta, I was 23. I worked admin at a financial firm, nothing special. And I was engaged to someone I thought was the answer to everything. She paused, rubbing the corner of her mouth with her sleeve. Then things went bad. He wasn't who I thought he was. Controlling, paranoid. He didn't hit me, not exactly, but he knew how to twist things so I'd think I was always the problem. He hacked my accounts, watched my texts, made me quit my job to focus on the wedding. I stayed silent, waiting, watching for the cracks. One night, I packed a duffel bag and left. No warning. Took a bus 3 states over. Got a new name. Heller helped me with the paperwork. Off the books. I paid him in cash over months. I cut everyone off. Friends, family, all of it. And the guy in the picture? I asked. She hesitated, just long enough for the air to shift. That's who I ran from. I pulled the business card from my pocket and slid it across the table. He said, you weren't the victim, that there were patterns. He said, this isn't the first time you've done this. Mela's face darkened, not with guilt, but something colder, sharper. Of course he said that, she muttered. He was the one who got bought out. Heller doesn't believe in victims. He believes in leverage. That photo? He took it. He said it was to protect me. I think it was just insurance in case I ever talked. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Everything felt like 2 mirrors facing each other, each reflection canceling out the last. Then what about the receipt, I said, the rooftop, the man in the suit, the name May? She looked right at me, and her voice was steady. That was a job interview. My blood went cold. You're looking for another job? I was, she said, because I knew something was breaking between us, and I didn't want to be stuck again, not like before. You mean stuck with me? She closed her eyes. I mean stuck in a life where I'm afraid to leave the house without being followed, where every question sounds like an accusation. The silence stretched. She pushed her mug away, hands shaking slightly. Ellery, you were supposed to be the quiet chapter, the one where I could breathe. The words hit harder than I expected, because part of me knew she meant them. But another part, the part that had seen the napkin, the receipt, the browser history, knew there were still missing pieces. She wasn't done talking, but I didn't want to hear more right then. I needed to step away, think, absorb. I nodded once and walked upstairs, not slamming doors, not packing bags, just thinking. Because now I didn't know what scared me more, that she might still be lying or that she wasn't. I didn't leave right away. I stayed one more week. We talked, really talked for the first time in months. No yelling, no accusations, just long pauses, hard truths, and the kind of silence that lets things heal or fall apart on their own. She told me everything, or enough. Some of it hurt, some of it made sense, and some of it I'll probably never fully understand. But I stopped needing all the answers. In the end, we packed up the house together, sold it. No lawyers, no fighting over furniture. Just two people who realized the story they wrote together had reached its last chapter. Now I live 3 towns over, got a quiet place near a lake, built my own fire pit, still fix things for a living, just not people anymore. I see the sun rise through clean windows. I sleep without checking her side of the bed. And sometimes when the air's still, I remember how it felt to ask her to stay, and I'm proud I finally learned how to leave.